Chapter 1. In the beginning, chaos and the birth of the cosmos. Before the stars blinked into the heavens, before the earth knew wind or water, there was only chaos. Not a place, nor a being, but a vast and silent emptiness, the still breath before creation, a void of infinite possibility. From this void stirred the first stirrings of existence. Out of chaos came Gaia, the earth, warm and nurturing, the ancient mother of all. Alongside her came Tartarus, the yawning abyss beneath the world, deep and dreadful. And there too was Eros, the tender spark of desire and union. Then came Nyx, the night, cloaked in velvet shadows, and Erebus, the darkness of the deep. One by one, these primordial beings gave shape to a cosmos that had never known form. Night and day were born, soft opposites that danced across time, bringing rhythm to the world. From Gaia's fertile soil rose Uranus, the sky, and when he stretched above her, the earth and sky were bound in embrace. From their union sprang the Titans, 12 immense beings who embodied the elements of the world. Oceanus, who flowed endlessly around the edges of the earth. Hyperion, the radiant light of the sun. Selene, the silvery moon who glided softly through the night. Each Titan a force, a mystery, a divine presence etched into the unfolding story of existence. Yet Uranus, the sky, feared his own children. He saw their power and potential and grew cold with dread. In his fear, he buried the Titans deep within Gaia, pressing them down into the belly of the earth, hidden from the light. Gaia groaned beneath the weight, her sorrow stirring into anger. From her depths, she crafted a sickle of unbreakable stone and gave it to her youngest son, Cronus, the clever one, the boldest among them. And so, one night, as Uranus descended to lie with Gaia once more, Cronus emerged from the shadows. With a swift motion, he struck, and the sky was severed from the earth. From the blood that spilled upon the waves came new beings, the giants, the Furies, and Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, who rose radiant from the sea's foam. With Uranus overthrown, Cronus became ruler of the cosmos, and the age of the Titans began. But even as he wore the crown of the world, a whisper followed him, a prophecy that one day his own child would rise to cast him down, just as he had done before. And so begins the tale of gods and mortals, of love and war, of creation and punishment, the story of Greek mythology, born from chaos, destined to echo through eternity. Chapter 2. The Titans and the Rise of the Olympians. Cronus ruled in peace at first. The earth was green, the seas were calm, and the skies were quiet under his reign. The Titans, his siblings, moved across the world as mighty forces, shaping rivers, stoking fire, guiding the stars, and the golden age of their dominion began. But Cronus, for all his power, was haunted by the words of prophecy. He had overthrown his father, and now fate whispered that his own child would one day do the same. And so, when his sister Rhea bore him children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, Cronus did the unthinkable. One by one, he swallowed them. Each child, as they drew their first breath, was cast into the darkness of his belly, silent, eternal. Rhea, heartbroken and afraid, watched each of her children vanish. But when her sixth child was born, a boy named Zeus, she could bear no more. With trembling hands and a mother's quiet fury, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Cronus. Unknowing, he devoured the rock. The real child, her son Zeus, she hid in a cave on the island of Crete, nestled among wild goats and watched over by Gaia herself. There he grew strong. Fed on honey and the milk of the divine goat Amalthea, Zeus was raised in secret, far from the gaze of his tyrant father. Years passed. The boy became a man, and when he was ready, Zeus returned to the world with lightning in his eyes and the storm in his soul. He confronted Cronus and forced him to disgorge what he had taken. One by one, Zeus's brothers and sisters were freed, alive and furious. Together they stood as gods, the first Olympians, and declared war upon the Titans. The war shook the earth and sky for 10 long years. Titans clashed with gods, mountains were torn asunder, and seas boiled with fury. To turn the tide, Zeus freed the ancient allies imprisoned deep beneath the world, the 100-handed ones and the Cyclopes. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged divine weapons, a thunderbolt for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, and a helm of invisibility for Hades. Armed with these gifts, the gods rose like a storm. Cronus and his siblings were finally defeated and cast down into Tartarus, the dark pit beneath the earth, where they would remain, bound in chains and shadow. Only a few titans were spared: Themis, the titaness of divine law, and Prometheus, who had chosen to stand with Zeus. And so the world passed from the age of titans to the age of gods. The three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, divided the cosmos between them. Zeus took the sky with its thunder and light. Poseidon claimed the sea, vast and deep, and Hades descended to the underworld to rule over the souls of the dead. High atop Mount Olympus, Zeus and his siblings formed a new pantheon, the 12 Olympians, deities who would watch over the earth, whisper into the lives of mortals, and shape the destiny of mankind for ages to come. And yet, even in this new golden age, the seeds of rebellion, of jealousy. Chapter 3: Prometheus and the Gift of Fire. Not all who stood with the Olympians during the Great War were gods. Among the Titans spared from punishment was Prometheus, wise, thoughtful, and ever watchful. While many of his kin were imprisoned in Tartarus, Prometheus walked the earth freely, yet his mind wandered often to something greater. He looked upon the world and saw its beasts, wild and wandering, creatures of instinct, without craft or thought. But Prometheus saw potential in them. He envisioned something more, something like the gods, but rooted in the soil of earth. And so, with careful hands, he shaped man from clay. He sculpted them in the image of the divine, upright and capable, with eyes that could see the stars, and minds that could wonder at their meaning. But though Prometheus had given them a form, they lacked what they needed most: power. They lived in darkness, huddled in caves, their lives short and uncertain. And so, Prometheus climbed once more to the heavens, reaching the heights of Olympus itself, where the sacred fire of the gods burned bright. He stole a single flame, carrying it hidden within a hollow stalk of fennel. He descended to the earth and gave fire to mankind. With it came warmth, protection, and light. Soon, man was crafting tools, cooking food, forging metal, and lifting their eyes toward civilization. But fire was not just a flame. It was knowledge. It was the power of creation and of destruction. Zeus looked down from Olympus and saw the fire flickering across the earth. He knew at once what had been done. Infuriated, Zeus decreed a punishment not only for mankind, but for Prometheus himself. The Titan was seized and bound to a lonely crag at the edge of the world. There he was chained, unyielding, to the cold rock. Each morning, an eagle, the symbol of Zeus, descended to feast upon Prometheus's liver, and each night it would grow back, only to be torn away again with the rising sun. Day after day, night after night, his torment endured, a cycle of suffering as eternal as the fire he had given. But Zeus was not yet finished. He wished to teach mankind a deeper lesson, that all gifts come at a price. And so he commanded Hephaestus, the divine smith, to shape something new, a being of beauty and cunning, curiosity and charm. He made her from earth and water, and each god bestowed upon her a gift: grace, skill, elegance, and voice. She was named Pandora, all gifted. Into her hands was placed a sealed jar, a mysterious vessel said to hold blessings, though none dared open it. And Pandora was sent down to the world, where she was welcomed by Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, who took her into his home despite warnings not to trust the gods. For a time, all was well, but Pandora's mind often turned to the jar, what it contained, why it had been forbidden. Her curiosity, planted by the gods, grew like a vine through her thoughts, winding tighter with each passing day. And one morning, unable to resist, she opened it. What burst forth was not treasure, but torment, sickness, envy, grief, greed. All the sorrows and struggles of mankind spilled into the world like shadows at dusk. She tried to close it, but it was too late. Only one thing remained inside. At the bottom of the jar, quiet and delicate, was hope, the final gift, a small flame to endure the darkness, and a whisper that even in pain there is meaning, even in loss there is light. Thus began the age of man, not perfect, but enduring, not divine, but dreaming. And far above them the gods watched. The world they had shaped was no longer theirs alone. Chapter 4: The Great Flood and the Rebirth of Mankind. Time moved forward, as it always does, and the world of men began to change. The fire Prometheus had gifted them gave rise to cities and craft, to speech and song, but also to ambition. And where there is ambition, pride often follows. The Golden Age, when men lived gently among the fields and forests, began to fade. In its place rose the Age of Silver, a time when people grew arrogant, forgetting the gods who once watched over them. Then came the Age of Bronze, full of war and violence, where men forged weapons and shed blood in pursuit of power. Compassion grew scarce. Reverence vanished. Zeus, high atop Olympus, looked down upon the world and felt only disappointment. He had hoped for harmony. He saw only chaos, and so, with a heavy heart, he resolved to begin again, not with lightning or fire, but with water, endless, cleansing, unstoppable. He summoned his brother Poseidon, lord of the sea, and whispered his wish into the waves, and the oceans answered. Storm clouds gathered above the earth, dark and brooding. Winds screamed across the land. Poseidon raised his trident, and with a single mighty strike, split the sea from its depths. Waters surged, rivers overflowed, the skies opened, and rain fell with such fury that even the tallest mountains began to vanish beneath the rising tide. It was a flood unlike any before, a great washing away of what had been. But not all were doomed. Prometheus, even in his suffering, had foreseen the storm. To his son Deucalion and his daughter-in-law Pyrrha, he whispered a warning, a way to survive. And so they built a sturdy chest, a great wooden vessel, and set sail upon the rising flood. Days passed, then weeks. The sky and sea became one, grey and endless. All around them, the world was silent, drowned beneath the waters. And yet they floated on, cradled by the waves, mourning what had been lost, but clinging to what remained. Finally, the rain ceased, the winds fell quiet, and far in the distance the peaks of Mount Parnassus pierced the clouds like fingers reaching for the sun. Their boat came to rest upon the summit, and for the first time in many days, they stepped once more onto solid earth. But the land around them was still empty, a world washed clean of humanity. In their solitude, Deucalion and Pyrrha turned to the gods and prayed, not for vengeance, not for answers, but for guidance. And the gods, moved by their sincerity, sent them an answer, a voice on the wind, a whisper from the Titaness Themis. "If you wish to restore mankind," she said, "cover your heads and cast the bones of your mother behind you." The message was a riddle, as many divine truths are, but Deucalion, wise like his father, understood. Their mother was Gaia, the earth itself, and her bones were the stones scattered across the ground. And so, they walked the slopes of the mountain, veiled in humility, casting stones behind them as they went. And with each stone thrown, a miracle occurred. Those cast by Deucalion took shape, becoming men, strong and sturdy, like the rock from which they came. Those cast by Pyrrha became women, graceful and enduring, born of earth and hope. In this way, humanity was born anew, no longer immortal, no longer innocent, but wiser, tempered by hardship, and blessed with the strength to rise again. And so the world turned once more. The flood waters receded, the soil softened, and life returned to the earth. But from that day forward, the stories of the gods would become deeply entwined with those of mortals. For man now knew both suffering and survival, and the gods, watching from above, knew that the age of heroes was just beginning. Chapter 5: Mount Olympus and the Reign of the Gods. Far above the world of men, beyond the reach of mountain peaks and drifting clouds, stood a realm untouched by time, Mount Olympus. Not just a place of stone and snow, but a divine palace of light and splendor, hidden from mortal eyes. Here the gods made their home. At its center stood Zeus, king of the gods, crowned not by inheritance but by victory, the one who had overthrown the Titans, who had brought order from chaos. In his hand, the thunderbolt. At his feet, the eagle, ever watching. He ruled the skies and heavens, shaping the winds, commanding the storms, and listening always to the prayers of men. Beside him sat Hera, his queen, the goddess of women and marriage. Proud and regal, she watched the affairs of gods and mortals with stern eyes and a wounded heart, for Zeus, despite his vows, was not always faithful. And so, the court of Olympus grew, 12 mighty gods and goddesses, each with their own gifts, their own stories, their own thrones among the clouds. There was Poseidon, Zeus's brother, lord of the oceans. He held dominion over every current and tide, guiding ships or shattering them with a flick of his trident. In the deep, he rode a golden chariot drawn by seahorses, and his moods could stir both calm waves and monstrous storms. There was Hades, the third brother, who ruled not in the sky or sea, but beneath the earth. Though feared by mortals, Hades was just and quiet, a keeper of souls rather than a bringer of death. His kingdom, the underworld, was not of evil, but of endings, where each soul found its fate. Athena, the daughter born fully grown from Zeus's brow, shone with wisdom and fierce clarity. A warrior and a thinker, she was the guardian of cities, the patron of artisans, and the goddess of reason. Her eyes held the calm before battle, her shield the face of Medusa, a symbol of courage and warning. Apollo, god of the sun and music, rode across the sky each day in his golden chariot, lighting the world with warmth and song. His twin sister Artemis, goddess of the moon and the hunt, moved silently through forests and fields, protector of wildlife and fierce guardian of her chastity. Then came Ares, god of war, raw and untamed. He gloried in battle and bloodshed, but was often scorned, even among the gods, for his recklessness and rage. Beside him, the fire god Hephaestus, lame in one leg but unmatched in skill, forged weapons for the gods and built wonders within his volcanic forge. Aphrodite, born from the sea foam, glided through Olympus like the breeze of spring. She was the goddess of love, beauty, and desire. Her presence stirred the hearts of both gods and mortals alike. Her son Eros, with his bow of golden arrows, sowed love wherever he aimed. There was Demeter, goddess of the harvest, who taught mankind to grow grain and tend the soil, and Hestia, goddess of the hearth, who kept the sacred fire burning and brought peace to the home. Lastly, there was Hermes, fleet-footed and clever, the messenger god. With winged sandals and a silver tongue, he moved between realms, delivering news, guiding souls, and stirring mischief wherever he went. These were the Olympians, divine and immortal, yet shaped by love, jealousy, pride, and passion. From their thrones on Mount Olympus, they watched over the world below, not as distant creators, but as vivid characters in the great unfolding drama of life. To the mortals who worshipped them, they were powerful and capricious, blessings one day, punishments the next. But in their flaws, the gods reflected the human soul, full of wonder, full of contradiction. And so the stories of the gods were told, around fires, in temples, through poems and plays, passed down through the generations, echoing through the valleys of Greece, and into the dreams of those who listened. For Mount Olympus was not just a home for gods, it was the heart of mythology, where every legend began, and where in quiet moments they still live on. Chapter 6: Myths of Love, Jealousy, and Transformation. Love in the world of the gods was never simple. It could blossom like spring or burn like fire, tender or wild, nurturing or cruel. And nowhere was this seen more clearly than in the tales that wove together the fates of gods and mortals. Zeus, mighty and watchful, was often stirred by desire. His eyes wandered across the earth, and when they fell upon Europa, a mortal princess picking flowers by the shore, he was overcome. To hide himself from Hera's gaze, he took the form of a beautiful white bull. Europa, charmed by its gentleness, climbed onto its back, and in a heartbeat the bull leapt into the sea. Across waves and time, he carried her to the island of Crete, where he revealed his true form. From their union would come sons of great renown, including King Minos, who would one day imprison the Minotaur in his labyrinth. And to honor her, Zeus would name the continent they stood upon after her, Europa. But Hera, queen of the gods, was not blind to her husband's betrayals. Her fury burned deep. When Zeus seduced Io, one of Hera's own priestesses, he turned her into a white cow to protect her. But Hera, seeing through the disguise, demanded the animal as a gift, and set the 100-eyed giant Argus to guard her. Zeus, afraid, sent Hermes to free Io. The messenger god lulled Argus to sleep with stories and music, then struck him down in silence. As tribute, Hera placed his eyes on the tail of her favorite bird, the peacock, its feathers ever watchful. Io fled, stung by a gadfly sent by Hera. She wandered across continents, her path etched into place names, the Ionian Sea, the Bosporus. At last, she reached Egypt, where Zeus restored her form. Her descendants would shape history: Perseus, Heracles, heroes born from her suffering. Not all love was tragic, but even the gentlest stories held shadows. In Cyprus, a sculptor named Pygmalion crafted a statue so beautiful he fell in love with it. Night after night, he prayed to the gods for a bride like her. Aphrodite, moved by his devotion, breathed life into the marble. The statue stepped from its pedestal, warm and smiling. Her name was Galatea. Love, in this case, was answered, but Aphrodite was not always kind. When Psyche, a mortal woman of such beauty that men forgot to worship the goddess of love, began to draw the world's attention, Aphrodite grew jealous. She sent her son Eros to make Psyche fall in love with a monster. But when he saw her, Eros himself fell. Silently, he made her his bride, visiting her only at night, asking only that she never look upon his face. Curiosity, however, is a powerful thing. One night, Psyche lit a lamp and looked. She saw not a beast, but the god of love. But in her wonder, she spilled hot oil onto his skin, waking him. Heartbroken, Eros fled. To win him back, Psyche was set a series of impossible tasks, including a journey to the underworld to retrieve a fragment of Persephone's beauty. She completed each trial. But at the last, she opened the box meant only for gods, and fell into a deep, deathless sleep. Eros, still in love, returned to her side. He lifted the curse with a kiss, and at last Zeus blessed their union, granting Psyche immortality, love and soul. Eros and Psyche would remain together for eternity. Yet not all stories ended so sweetly. The nymph Echo loved the beautiful Narcissus, who loved no one but his reflection. Cursed to only repeat what others said, she could never speak her own heart. When he spurned her, she faded into the hills, until only her voice remained, the echo we still hear in lonely places. As for Narcissus, he stared too long at his image in a still pool. Enchanted by himself, he wasted away. In his place bloomed a delicate flower, the first Narcissus, a symbol of beauty and of vanity. Love, jealousy, and transformation. They wound through every myth like threads of gold and shadow. The gods gave freely, but they also took. They rewarded those who were brave, clever, or faithful, and punished those who dared defy the order of things. But through it all, these stories endure, soft as starlight, timeless as the tide. Chapter 7: Heroes, Prophecies, and Mortal Fates. Though the gods ruled from on high, their gaze often turned to the mortal world, to men and women whose lives would echo through eternity. For in the age after the flood, the world was not only shaped by gods, but by heroes, those rare mortals who stood between heaven and earth, touched by destiny, driven by courage, and marked by prophecy. Among the first was Cadmus, brother to Europa, who wandered far in search of his sister, taken by Zeus. His quest led him not to her, but to the oracle of Delphi, who whispered a different fate. "Follow the sacred cow," she said, "and where it lays to rest, build your city." So he wandered, step by patient step, through wild lands until the cow lay down in the fields of Boeotia. There he founded Thebes, a city that would become a stage for many myths. But his journey did not end in bricks and stone. Near a spring sacred to Ares, a dragon coiled, fierce and ancient. When Cadmus slew the beast, he planted its teeth into the soil. From the earth sprang armed warriors, fully grown. They fought one another until only 5 remained, and these became the founders of noble houses in Thebes. Though Cadmus had pleased the gods with his piety, slaying a creature of Ares brought consequence. He was forced into years of servitude to the war god, repaying blood with obedience. Yet even after his freedom was won, sorrow followed Cadmus. He wed Harmonia, daughter of Ares and Aphrodite, and received from Hephaestus a cursed necklace, beautiful, but fated to bring ruin to all who possessed it. And so it did. Their descendants, touched by misfortune, would suffer madness, betrayal, and death. Among them was Oedipus, the 7th king of Thebes, a name whispered in every tragedy. At birth it was prophesied that he would kill his father and wed his mother. In horror, his parents abandoned him, but fate, once spoken, cannot be silenced. Raised by strangers, Oedipus would one day meet a man on the road and, in anger, strike him down, not knowing he had killed his own father. Later, he would solve the riddle of the Sphinx and be welcomed into Thebes as a savior and as husband to its queen, his mother Jocasta. The truth unraveled slowly, as all dark truths do. And when it came, Jocasta took her life, and Oedipus, struck blind by despair, wandered the world, not as a king, but as a lesson, that even the greatest among mortals cannot escape fate. Another hero, Perseus, was born of prophecy too. His mother Danae had been imprisoned in a bronze tower to prevent her from bearing a child, for it was foretold that her son would bring about the death of her father, the king. But Zeus, in the form of golden light, visited her, and from that union Perseus was born. Set adrift upon the sea in a wooden chest, Perseus would survive, grow strong, and one day be tasked with a quest impossible for any man, to slay Medusa, the Gorgon with serpents for hair, and a gaze that turned all who met her eyes to stone. With help from the gods, a mirrored shield from Athena, winged sandals from Hermes, Perseus found her lair, crept silently, and struck true. Her head, still full of power, would later be used to save the innocent and defend the weak. From Medusa's severed neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, who would carry new heroes on their own journeys. These stories of Cadmus, of Oedipus, of Perseus, are threads in a vast tapestry of human bravery, tragedy, and triumph. The gods may have stirred the winds, but the heroes walked through storms. They were loved and punished, helped and hindered, praised and mourned. And though mortal, they lived forever in tale and memory, their names etched into marble, their deeds sung by poets. For it is in their journeys that we find our own, the fears we face, the burdens we carry, the hopes we hold, even in the darkest night. Chapter 8. Hades and the Realm of the Dead. Beneath the earth, far from the songs of birds and the warmth of sunlight, lay a realm untouched by time, a shadowed kingdom where no mortal could walk and return unchanged. This was the underworld, ruled not by darkness alone, but by a quiet and ancient god, Hades. Hades, brother of Zeus and Poseidon, did not rule the storms nor stir the seas. Instead, he kept the realm of endings, the resting place of all who had drawn breath. Though feared by many, he was no villain, nor cruel by nature. His role was solemn, his purpose defined, to receive the dead and guard their peace. The path to the underworld began at the river Styx, black and slow-moving, its surface reflecting not light, but memory. Souls of the newly dead gathered there, waiting in silence. Only those buried with a coin beneath their tongue could pay Charon, the ancient ferryman, to carry them across. Those who could not pay wandered the banks for 100 years, lost in limbo, a reminder that even in death, the forgotten still seek passage. Across the river, a towering gate of stone and shadow marked the threshold, guarded by Cerberus, the three-headed hound. His snarls echoed through the cavern halls, a warning to any who would try to escape. Beyond, the realm of Hades stretched wide, not of fire and torment alone, but a mosaic of places, each echoing the lives that had been lived. There were the fields of asphodel, grey and still, where most souls drifted without pain or joy. These were the common dead, neither heroes nor villains, simply people remembered and then forgotten. For the virtuous, for those who had loved well, fought nobly, or shown great wisdom, there was Elysium, a paradise of green fields and gentle skies, where music played and peace was eternal. Here the air was soft and the stars never dimmed, and within Elysium, across a silver shore, lay the Isle of the Blessed, a sacred refuge for the greatest of all. Achilles, Helen, Orpheus, their names whispered in the winds that carried across the waters. But not all souls knew such grace. The deepest region, Tartarus, was a place of unyielding punishment, not for ordinary sins, but for great offences against the gods. Here, the Titans who had defied Zeus were imprisoned, bound in chains forged from the bones of the world. Here was Tantalus, forever thirsty, standing in water that receded with every sip, and hungry beneath fruit he could never reach. Here was Sisyphus, pushing a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back each time, his struggle endless. The Furies, ancient spirits of vengeance, stalked these halls. With eyes like burning coals and hair like writhing snakes, they hunted those who had spilled family blood, tormenting their minds until they were driven to madness. And yet, even in this solemn realm, there were moments of tenderness. Persephone, queen of the dead and wife of Hades, brought a soft beauty to the shadowed halls. Though stolen from the living world by her husband, she found a strange power in her new role. For half the year, she walked among the shades. For the other half, she returned to the earth, and with her, the spring. Together, she and Hades ruled not as tyrants, but as stewards, guardians of the cycle of life and death, ensuring that every soul found its place. And then there was Orpheus, whose music softened even the hearts of stone. When his beloved Eurydice died, he descended into the underworld, lyre in hand. He played for the dead, and the dead listened. Charon wept. Cerberus lay down to sleep. Hades and Persephone, moved by his grief, granted him a chance to reclaim her, on one condition, that he lead her out without once looking back. Through shadowed tunnels they climbed, Orpheus ahead, Eurydice behind, her footsteps a whisper in the dark. But just before the light of the world returned, doubt crept into his heart. He turned, and she vanished, taken once more. It was a lesson older than time, that love is powerful, but trust is what carries it home. In the depths of the earth, Hades keeps his silent watch. He does not interfere with the affairs of Olympus or the winds of war. He simply waits, patient, impartial, eternal. And when the time comes, every soul, king or beggar, hero or thief, walks his halls. Not with fear, but with understanding, for all things that live must one day rest. And in the underworld, the stories do not end, they simply change. Chapter 9. The Lessons of the Myths. Punishment, Wisdom, and Hope. The myths of ancient Greece were never just stories. Beneath every tale of thunder and flame, of love lost or battles won, was something quieter, a lesson. A whisper meant not only for kings and warriors, but for every soul who sat by the fire and listened. Some lessons were stern, reminders of balance and respect. Prometheus, who defied the gods to give fire to mankind, paid for his defiance with eternal torment. Sisyphus, who cheated death not once but twice, spent forever pushing a boulder uphill. And Tantalus, who betrayed the sacred bond of hospitality, was cursed to hunger and thirst without end. Even beauty bore a cost. Narcissus, so enchanted by his reflection, could love no one else. His story became a mirror, not of his face, but of vanity's quiet cruelty. And Arachne, who dared to challenge the goddess Athena in the art of weaving, spun a tapestry too perfect, too bold. In anger or pity, the goddess transformed her into a spider, her skill eternal, but her form forever changed. The gods could be generous, but they were never to be mocked, ignored, or defied. And yet, not every myth ended in ruin. Many were full of wonder, of growth, of transformation. Persephone's tale brought not only loss, but the rhythm of seasons, a reminder that death is not the end, but a pause before renewal. Demeter, grieving for her daughter, caused winter to fall. But when Persephone rose again, so did the flowers, the wheat, the bees, the world reborn each spring. In sorrow there was balance. In return there was hope. Hope, that fragile flame at the bottom of Pandora's jar, appears again and again, sometimes quietly, sometimes shining brightly through the darkest tales. Psyche's love endured every trial. Her faith faltered, yes, but her determination carried her through the underworld and back. In the end, even the gods honored her devotion. She, a mortal, was granted immortality, and her union with Eros became a symbol that love and soul, once joined, can never truly be parted. Orpheus lost Eurydice, but in his music, her memory lived on. He sang her name into eternity, and in doing so, taught the world that beauty and grief are often born from the same breath. These myths, however distant they seem, filled with winged horses and golden apples, shape-shifting gods and cursed kings, speak to something deep and familiar. They remind us that pride can be our downfall, that wisdom comes through struggle, that love, though fragile, is worth every trial, that death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it, and that even in our darkest moments, there's always a spark of something more. In these stories, the Greeks captured the whole of the human experience: joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, creation and destruction. But above all, they left behind a gift, the understanding that our lives, like theirs, are stories in motion, that each of us walks a winding path between chaos and order, fate and choice, shadow and light. And in walking it, in living it, we become part of the myth. Chapter 10. The enduring legacy of Greek mythology. Though the temples have crumbled and the altars lie silent, the myths of ancient Greece still echo, not only in the ruins of marble and stone, but in the hearts of those who remember, and in the stories we continue to tell. For these tales of gods and monsters, of love and loss, of fate and defiance, are not just relics of a vanished world. They are living threads woven into the fabric of our culture, our language, our art, and our dreams. We see them in the stars, where constellations trace the outlines of heroes: Orion, Perseus, Andromeda. In literature, where echoes of Homer's verses still stir the soul. In paintings, where Aphrodite rises from the sea, and Athena stands proud in armour. In theatre, where tragedy was born, and catharsis first took form. But beyond these echoes lies something deeper. Greek mythology endures because it speaks to what it means to be human. It reminds us that even the divine can be flawed, that gods can be jealous, impulsive, and tender. That power does not make one perfect, and that mortals, fragile though we are, can rise to greatness through courage, loyalty, and love. The myths teach us that every gift carries risk, that beauty and destruction often walk hand in hand, that fate may be written in the stars, but our response, our choices, are our own. And in those choices we find meaning. In times of grief, we remember Demeter's sorrow and the promise of spring's return. In moments of uncertainty, we recall Odysseus sailing home through storm and temptation. When we speak of impossible odds, we speak of Heracles, whose labours were as much of the soul as of strength. And when we ponder the soul itself, we think of Psyche, of trust, of love, of the journey through darkness to reach the light. Even now, we tell these stories in new ways. In books and films, in classrooms and dreams, we return to Olympus, to the labyrinth, to the riverbanks where Echo waits and Narcissus gazes. We return not out of nostalgia, but out of need, because within these ancient tales is a truth as enduring as time itself, that we are not alone in our questions. Others have stood before us, beneath the same stars, asking who we are, why we suffer, and what lies beyond the horizon. And so, Greek mythology lives on, not just in words, but in wonder, a bridge between past and present, a mirror for the soul, a whisper from the old gods, reminding us that even in the stillness of night, the stories remain, waiting to be heard and to be dreamt again. And so the tales fade, like footsteps in the dust of time. But even as the gods retreat into shadow, and the heroes rest beneath the stars, their stories live on, not just in marble ruins or forgotten scrolls, but within us. Thank you for drifting off with me tonight. May your dreams be guided by wisdom, warmed by wonder, and wrapped in the calm embrace of stories that never truly end. Until next time, sleep well